The New Orleans Saints, led by coach Sean Payton, were navigating uncharted territory. As underdogs playing in their first ever Super Bowl, they were hanging tough at halftime, trailing by 4 to the mighty Indianapolis Colts. Set to kick off to start the second half, they presumably had designs on making a defensive stop to get the ball back in the hands of their star quarterback to try and take the lead. As rookie Thomas Morstead readied to strike the football deep, something funny happened. He didn't. Instead, an all-time gamble of an onside kick from out of left field led to chaos, confusion, and for the team that ultimately emerged with the ball, a coronation. Sean Payton's decision in Super Bowl 44 to call for a surprise onside kick was a big deal. Quick detour to let you know Secret Base is now on Patreon. Subscribers get early access to videos on top of all sorts of additional content that's housed exclusively over there, so if you haven't already, make sure you get yourself a subscription. But for now, back to this one. You can forgive the Saints for acting unconventionally here, because there wasn't anything less conventional than their presence in the NFL's biggest game. Throughout their first 39 years of an existence that started in 1967, they were by far the league's most dreadful team. They didn't make the playoffs in any of their first 20 seasons, and they didn't win their first playoff game until season 34, which remained their lone such win up through a 2005 season that represented rock bottom. Hurricane Katrina devastated the region, forcing the Saints to leave New Orleans in a nomadic year with no stable home in a disastrous 3-13 campaign. Then, needing a new head coach before season 40 in 06, they pried loose from Dallas hotshot offensive mind Sean Payton to rebuild the team into something the city could rally around. When Nick Saban's Miami Dolphins failed to reel in free agent quarterback Drew Brees due to concerns over his surgically repaired shoulder, Payton pounced, landing his man he'd be tied to at the hip. The city pinned their hopes on this duo spearheading the reconstruction of the football team, surely a slow, methodical process given the depths to which they'd sunk. Only someone forgot to tell him it needed to take a while. In year one together, fireworks. 10 wins, a division title, their first ever postseason bye, and their first ever appearance in a conference championship game. In year 4, as the stewards of the franchise once 09 rolled around, Payton and Brees guided the Saints to wins in each of their first 13 games, just the 5th team of the Super Bowl era to pull that off. Number 6 joined the club about 17 minutes later in Indy. Unsurprisingly, those Colts cruised their way in a ho-hum manner with no controversy to capture the AFC title and a berth in Super Bowl 44. The Saints also ultimately won the NFC title, in slightly less ho-hum, slightly more controversial fashion, to set up their clash with a team whose 2 most prominent players, quarterback Peyton Manning and wideout Reggie Wayne, hailed from New Orleans. Installed as 5-point underdogs, the Saints got off to a flat start, and, after a Pierre Garçon touchdown, trailed 10-zip after the first quarter. They had a chance to tie the game late in the second quarter, but got stonewalled at the goal line on 3rd down, and again on 4th to emerge with no points. Down by 4 at the half, and with that empty-handed trip upon reaching the precipice perhaps planting a seed as to how to steal that possession back, Payton spent the 35-minute intermission deliberating. His team needed some sort of spark with a stagnant offense that had yet to find the end zone. Set to kick off coming out of the locker room, he had at his disposal 2 options. Option 1, kick it deep, conceding possession to the Colts where it could be expected they'd start their ensuing drive at around their own 20-yard line or slightly beyond. To get in field goal range for 42-year-old kicker Matt Stover, Indy would probably need to reach the plus 30-yard line, which would ostensibly be about 50 yards away. To score a touchdown, they'd need to drive about 80 yards. This is the conventional option chosen with overwhelming frequency. Option 2, stun the world and unleash a surprise onside kick, which entails kicking the ball 10 yards and hoping to recover it themselves. This was an option generally deployed on a desperation basis when trailing late in a game, with the onside intentions telegraphed by the kicking team's personnel and alignment. It was executed on a surprise basis approximately 10 times per NFL season, representing less than 1/2 of 1% of all NFL kickoffs. If Payton wants to pull an extra possession out of his orifice, this option provides such a potential high reward, but also carries with it enormous risk. An onside kick from their own 30-yard line would mean hoping for a recovery around their own 40. There's some built-in wiggle room depending on the exact time period analyzed in a sample, and, despite no ambiguity in this instance, the exact definition of the word surprise. But generally speaking, they produced about a 40 to 45% success rate. In the nearly 60% chance of failure, Payton would be handing Payton the ball already on the outskirts of field goal range, needing only about 40 yards for a touchdown that'd re-establish their 2-score lead. It would also be an unprecedented maneuver within Super Bowl history. Never before had an onside kick been attempted before the fourth quarter in any of its first 43 editions. Midway through halftime, a confident Payton boldly finalized his decision to his entire team.
Hey, pay attention now. One quick thing. We're going to start this half kicking off. All right, ambush. Now listen, man. Let's go get this game.
The man upon whom all New Orleans' hopes and dreams lie to execute the ambush was a rookie, Thomas Morstead, who'd never in his entire life attempted an onside kick. To say he was apprehensive would qualify as the understatement of the year. If ever an NFL player not named Mark Schlereth were pissing down his leg, it was Thomas Morstead in the visitors' locker room of Sun Life Stadium at halftime of the 44th Super Bowl. But Payton, who'd actually attempted a surprise onside kick in all 3 of his prior seasons leading the Saints, had some fascinating first-hand experience in this department. Back in his 2006 maiden voyage campaign, he was victimized in the third quarter by Niner kicker Joe Nedney's immaculate execution of such a kick. Perhaps inspired by that, the very next week Payton returned to his stomping grounds from the previous 3 years and unleashed what I'd argue is the most diabolical onside kick call in NFL history against his mentor Bill Parcells. With the Saints nursing an 18-point lead with 20 minutes left, Payton went for the jugular and got it. Sure, the 12-22-63 Chargers kicked onside with a 38-point lead, but at least that hysterical pettiness occurred when the game was ending regardless after that kickoff. 2 others are close. John Gruden's 07 Bucks whipped out a surprise onside up 21 against the Falcons in Atlanta's very first game following the ignominious mid-season departure of internationally recognized coward Bobby Petrino. And Mike Martz's 01 Rams were boat racing the Jets by 24 when he called for such a third quarter surprise. But at least Gruden and Martz ran the ball a few times and could plausibly claim that the potential to drain some clock was part of their calculus. No such plausibility existed for Payton in Irving, Texas, who, in the wake of the successful recovery, dialed up passes on the first, second, third, and fourth and final play of the subsequent drive. He just really wanted to be up 25 toward the end of the third quarter, which we all know is an insurmountable advantage. But because of the score, that wasn't a very consequential decision, and it didn't really matter if they failed. The more relevant comparisons that involved real risk for Payton occurred in the next couple years. 2007's surprise onside that Payton called occurred against the Jags and was also successful in forming the inspiration for ambush. And finally, in 2008, he tried to catch the Vikings sleeping, but that one backfired. So carrying that background in his past of being as willing as anyone to gamble on a surprise onside, and having just made his decision to add another notch to that belt in executing one of the foremost dice rolls ever seen on this sort of stage, Payton's terrified rookie approached the ball and struck it well, but the knuckleball headed straight toward the sure hands of Indy's Hank Baskett. But Baskett's a wide receiver, which sorta neutered much of the upside of the surprise onside, since you're hoping the surprise means it'd be like a D tackle or a linebacker or something trying to corral the ball. But it somehow eluded Hank's Baskett in squirting loose, setting off a massive scrum. Safety Chris Reese managed to pounce on the ball, but it was on the cusp of slipping away between his legs with Baskett's second effort on the verge of redeeming himself. That's when linebacker Jonathan Casillas Mufasa'd his way into the picture, launching himself into Baskett to free up Reese from regaining control of the ball. pure mayhem ensues extensively beyond that, with God knows what kind of nastiness going on in the bowels of the pileup amid the frenzied effort to secure possession. After what seemed like an eternity, the officials finally had it up to here.
You get out of here! You get out of here! You get out of here!
Payton, too, reached his wits' end.
Hey, we got the ball!
Referee Scott Green disagreed, prompting a mystified Reese to voice his exasperation.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have the ball right here. There's no reason to say blue ball.
Like two toddlers arguing over which toy to play with at recess, Payton dug in.
White ball! White ball!
And with that, Green finally came around
White ball!
to finally bring an end to the 63-second scrum. Of course, even winning the monumental gamble still wouldn't pay any dividends if the Saints couldn't then go marching in for points. Breeze quickly made sure it wouldn't all be for naught, crisply matriculating his team down the field and completing all 5 of his passes, capped by a 16-yard screen to Pierre Thomas, who weaved his way to Pater to grab the lead. So yes, after a Pierre produced the game's first huge play, and a Thomas produced the game's second huge play, a Pierre Thomas produced the game's third huge play. Thanks to those 7 points stemming from the onside kick, the Saints led by exactly that amount with 5 minutes and change left in the game, compelling Indy to abandon the run and become one-dimensional and predictable. That led to a 3rd and 5 where boundary corner Tracy Porter and slot corner Malcolm Jenkins confuse Manning by passing off a couple Colts wideouts to each other, and boom, Porter grabs the gift, and 74 yards later he's in the end zone, having clinched for his team their very first ever Vince Lombardi trophy. Capitalizing on opportunity is the prevalent theme here. The Saints had to capitalize on the opportunity to recover the onside kick and get points, as the game's complexion would have been completely different if either Indy had recovered or even if New Orleans had simply kicked it deep. But bigger picture, the Saints also had to capitalize on this opportunity of playing in a Super Bowl. Because it isn't even just that they never made it in any of their previous 42 years of existence before '09, while only once even reaching the NFC Championship game. The team and their fans didn't know it at the time, but across their 16 seasons and counting following '09, they likewise won't reach a Super Bowl and only once get as far as an NFC title game, while experiencing their fair share of excruciating heartbreak. So 2009 was it. Super Bowl 44 was their one shot. And thanks to one gutsy onside kick, they pulled it off. Ballsiness that even earned presidential admiration a few months later.
I make some tough decisions every day, but I never decided on an onside kick in the second half of the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm glad that thing went all right.
If it hadn't gone all right, the Saints would quite possibly enter their 60th season in franchise history with an empty trophy case. For organizational pillars like Payton and Breeze, who both remained in New Orleans together for more than a decade after Super Bowl 44, we'll never know whether or not they would have lasted there as long as they did without the championship. Maybe without it, Breeze would have gotten antsy and left the Big Easy within the next few years in pursuit of a ring. And/or maybe their 89-year-old owner would have grown impatient with Payton after his 3rd consecutive losing season in 2016 and made a coaching change. But the one thing that can be said with absolute certainty is without that Super Bowl title, they wouldn't have their legacies unassailably cemented. Instead, in the wake of an onside kick that galvanized the team, they do. Suffice it to say, Sean Payton's decision and his team's execution of it was quite the big deal. Thanks for watching this episode of Big Deal, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Patreon if you want to mosey on over there and subscribe to Secret Base like all of these people who get perks including early access to videos as well as all sorts of bonus exclusive content.